How can God allow that to happen? Right? Did God mean to create that? Now, we've explained God is loving, God is allowing, in order to uphold the original intention of loving free will creation. There's a huge tolerance of allowance. But there's a question beyond that. Does God create things like black hole matrices and beings that suck energy off other beings on purpose? Was this part of the divine design? Does God want them there, put them there in the first place, so they do that? In other words, do they have divine permission to use their free will in a way that's harmful to other life forms? Now, if you think about that, you'd have like a bipolar personality disorder problem if God did do that. You would have God saying, okay, I'm going to create myself in free will over here so I can experience all these things, then I'm going to create another part of myself to feed off myself and terrorize myself over here so I can experience how miserable it feels and how good it feels on this side. You'd have some real personality issues being worked out there. God did not create the black hole systems on purpose. What God did in knowing that this, by creating this format, which is an eternal life, perpetual motion, universal structure, there were certain things built in. It was going to be a free will structure. There were going to be certain tolerances built in that would create the potential for things like that to happen. It wasn't that those things, that things like, fallen matrices and black holes and beings getting really nasty and doing nasty things to other ones, that wasn't God's desire in creation. But God's desire for creation was so strong to experience the joyful aspects and the aspects of learning and self-experience, because we're all faces of God. God's experiencing who God is through knowing itself as everything it manifests. That desire to express out of love and just the love of being able to create and know creation and not feel lonely anymore, because if you're just one God and there's nothing else in the universe, you feel pretty lonesome after a while. But God created the framework that would allow for the joyful, free will, love-based creation. But in so doing, because of the way energy works, and in order to create this framework where you could live in a three-dimensional holographic system, there had to be certain balances of energy that were allowed to take place, or you couldn't have this either. The potential for negativity was created there. And God knew it would be up to the parts of itself that it individuated into those experiences, whether or not that potential for extreme negativity that some people call evil would exist. God didn't create evil on purpose, but God knew in creating good or joyful perpetual life that the potentiality of that being turned in on itself was there. And God has, and still does and always will, have the hope and desire to have the parts of itself that are in the hologram know the original intention, because that was a joyful creation. The misfortunate things that can take place when beings get free will and then they forget who they are, and